Hi everyone, in this video I want to show you what a difference some paint can make. Welcome to my crafting channel. I'm Alana from Upcycling NZ. For project number 1 I'll be working on this little statue that was put outside the front of someone's house for free. It's a garden ornament and it took a fair bit of scrubbing to get all of the mildew and moss off this. It's made of concrete and it's a cockatoo or a galah, so it's an Australian import because we don't have these here in New Zealand. The first thing I'll do is I'm going to take one of my homemade chalk paints. This colour is called Linen White, and I'll be applying this with a chippy brush which will get right into all of that fine detail, and I'll just be giving this one good coat. Now I'm going to move on to some colour, and I'm going to use my homemade chalk paints in the colour Mary Rose and Page. I often name my paint colours after my subscribers, and if you want to see how I make this homemade chalk paint, I'll leave a link in the description for you. So I'll turn this little statue into a galah, which is a pink and grey bird. I actually had one of these birds when I was living in Australia. It was a juvenile and I was succeeding in training him quite well. However, being the animal lover that I was, I didn't want to clip his wings because I thought that was unnatural. And sure enough, one day he got a fright and flew away and probably couldn't find his way back to the house. If he hadn't found another owner though, he would have been fine because they were native to the area and he would have successfully been able to live in the wild. I did a Google image search to get the colours right, and I'm just blending that pink into the grey by just mixing it while it's still wet. I'll need a paler pink for the feathers on the top of the head, so I'll add some Linen White to my Mary Rose colour to create the colour I need. Paint his little feet grey, then I'll paint the beak a paler colour grey just by adding some more of that Linen White. I'll paint the base white with some subtle grey tones. Lastly, I'll take a little bit of black and I'm mixing that with my grey to create the eyes around the beak, around its little feet, and then at the very end of those tail feathers. This little statue was so porous that it didn't take very long to dry at all, so I'm going to seal it with some white wax. This is a folk art product which will protect the paint and provide a little bit of water resistance. So I'm just applying a coat in sections and I'm getting right into all of that really fine detail. Then I'll be taking a wet wipe and I'll just be wiping back the excess. Using this technique really makes all of those fine details pop, and it gives the whole statue, I think, a beautiful sort of washed out effect. Before I put this outside, I'll need to seal it with a clear sealer. So I'm really happy with the way this has turned out. I don't think I've seen anything quite like it around in people's gardens. I would love to hear what you think, so tell me in the comments. On to project number 2, and I'm going to make use of those Pringles tins that are so useful for crafting. I'll make a number of these, but I'll paint this one in the colour Yorkie and another of my homemade chalk paints. And this one needed 2 coats. I'll decorate these in a variety of ways, but for this one I'm going to use stamps, and rather than use ink, which will likely smudge or be a bit pale on this background, I'm going to use black paint. And I'm just using a fan brush to spread that nice and evenly across the piece of glass, and then I use that as a stamp pad. This works really well and is permanent. So this is a little French advertising stamp, but I want to make it a bit bigger. So I just use one of these little detail stamps, and I'll put one at the top and one at the bottom. I want to use these for craft storage, so these little letters I've cut up are from kitchen labels that I got from the dollar store. I'll show you those a little bit further on in the video. Now I'm taking some antiquing wax, and I'm using a small piece of sponge. I get those off a dish scourer, and I'm just going to apply it all the way around the bottom and top edges to give it some age. I'm blending it and feathering it out, and I'll go round that label to give it a bit more definition and help to make it stand out. I'm just taking some little fussy cut flowers, and I'll attach those to the top of the tin. And I'm just randomly placing elements that have commonality on each of my tins so that they tie together as a set, even though each one is very different. I hope that makes some sense, but I will be sticking to somewhat of a colour story so that they tie in together. The next one's been painted in white, and I found these napkins at the dollar store. They have a beautiful bird print on them. I want to decoupage this onto my surface, but first I have to take the second ply off the back of the napkin. Sometimes there's 3 plies, you'll have to remove 2 if that's the case. I'm using PVA glue to apply this. You could use Mod Podge, and I'll put a generous amount on the surface before I apply my napkin. So I'm just smoothing that glue out, and I'll cover the whole surface first. Because that pattern repeats, I'm going to break this up so that I can apply it a bit easier. I'm very gently applying a coat to the top of the napkin as well, and that way I can overlap my next piece and fill in any spaces. Once that had dried, I applied my lettering. These are little stickers, so I'm pushing out any air bubbles with my plastic spatula. And I'll age the edges with antiquing wax. The next tin's painted in this denim blue, and I'm using stamps again, but this time I'm going to use white paint. Next I'm using transfers, and these peel off the backing, stick onto the surface, and then when you use a plastic spatula to rub your image down, it'll adhere to the tin, and then you can peel off that adhesive backing. I also use that piece of film to burnish or rub down my image. And in this bit of footage I'm crafting along with a friend of mine, Michelle. This one is her creation, and we're using up some of these wisteria transfers which I had. Michelle got a beautiful result, and she's never used transfers before, so it just goes to show you that these are very easy to use. Here's how they're both looking. Then I went ahead and added my lettering to my tin. I've taken some script writing in a stamp, and I'm adding that in white paint, and that's going to be my common element to tie my tins together. I'll use another transfer on this green tin, and it's a French themed one with some white flowers which will tie back to some of that white stamping on my other tins. These are the kitchen labels I've been cutting up to make my lettering. And for the last tin in my set, I'm not going to paint it at all. I'm going to show you that you can do it without a paint. I got these sets of ephemera from the Temu website, so I'm just selecting some contrasting pieces. I want it to look very patchwork, and I'm just going to glue that on, overlapping each piece so it looks more like a patchwork. I'm using PVA glue again, and I'm doing a layer of that glue over the top as well. So this is the last one in my set of 6. Did you have a favourite out of these? If you did, I'd love to know in the comments. Well, that's it from me for this week. Thanks for watching. Please share, like and subscribe. Bye for now from beautiful New Zealand.